After knowing the significant events in the Age of Reason, we'll now proceed to the literatures on the Age of Reason and the writers. First writer is Francis Bacon. He was born on January 22, 1561. Francis Bacon is considered as the father of scientific method. He proposed the testing of hypotheses through a series of rigorous methods that eventually became known as the Baconian method or the scientific method. And additional for Francis Bacon, he is the father of inductive reasoning, also the father of the English essay. He was called as the father of English essay, for he who imparted this genre, the essay, from Montaigne of France and planted it into English language and literature. He draws his knowledge on Latin from ancient Roman wisdoms through actions and proverbs. Another one or addition from that is he introduced the scientific revolution and his literature, and this allowed common people of this era to question old traditional beliefs wherein they began to consider everything with reason. They began to consider everything with reason, which led to a greater sense of self as well as moral and ethical standards, meaning by having this opportunity to judge for themselves, the people were able to advance to a society a step closer to a form of democracy. And this proves or shows how the period has become the age of reason. So that's for Francis Bacon. Let's proceed to his works, which is the essays. The essays is the greatest literary contribution of the 17th century, which is written by Francis Bacon. It includes both public and private life covering from a different angles, weighing one argument with each other. The Essays is a collection of essays that was originally published in 1625, wherein Bacon delves into a variety of topics using inductive reasoning to find truth based on observations of the world. The application of inductive reason to scientific and philosophical pursuits was breakthrough in the history of human knowledge, wherein the themes of essays focuses on death, religion, beauty, friendship, anger, and the nature of men. And in the essays written by Bacon, here are some of his famous quotable quotes. And let's begin with the first one. It says here, some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. That is, some books are to be read only in parts, others to be read but not curiously, and some few to be read. And that is from the essay entitled Of Studies. So, in this quote, what comes into your mind or what have you understand? Okay. So in this quote of Bacon, he simply means that some books are only worthy of a quick reading or an examination of an idea. In the line, they should be tasted. However, these books or those books that are important must be read thoroughly in the lines, some are to be chewed and digested and swallowed. Just like in the case of good foods. Not only should it be chewed, it must be checked or it must be digested only to be assimilated into the body. And this is exactly similar to reading books which must be chewed and digested, and this includes the categories of great classics, the great religious books, dramas of Shakespeare, and the great poetry. In other words, these are the ones that require us to use higher order thinking skills or critical thinking. In the lines, some books are to be read only in parts, and others to be read but not curiously. It suggests that we have to spend more time in acquiring knowledge and spend short period for fun books, which is to be just tasted only. Furthermore, Of Studies is an essay written by Francis Bacon that points out the importance of studying, which is helpful for better understanding and provides a knowledge that develops experience as well as a character that grows. Reading provides delight and fun, ornament and showing off, and the ability for success. Furthermore, it implies the importance of study knowledge in terms of its practical application towards the individual and its society. Of Studies is an informative one in which, for us students, it will help us to diverse situations, to enhance intellect and cures restraints on the minds of readers and provides the proper method for reading different subjects and discusses their benefits. And that's for Of Studies. It's all about studying and learning. So let's proceed to the second one. This quote is from the essay of Marriage and Single Life. It says here that he that hath wife and children hath given hostages to fortune, for they are impediments to great enterprises, either of virtue or mischief. Addition is impediments means that hinders or a hindrance or an obstruction. In this quote of Bacon, it depicts that a man with a wife cannot be so adventurous. Do you agree? That a man with a wife cannot be so adventurous or take so many chances as an unmarried man. While a hostage is a person given to another as a pledge or security, and these hostages to fortune means that a person or things that one may lose. It means that if you have a wife or a husband and children, you cannot just go wherever and whatever you want. In this essay of Bacon, entitled Of Marriage and Single Life, he is able to compare the single life and the married life through different lenses. He puts forward the pros and cons of marriage in terms of how it is viewed by society and how it affects an individual. In addition, Bacon enlists the burdens and limitations of marriage. He extols the benefits of marriage and how it shapes a person, or how a marriage shapes a person. Bacon insists that having a family can make a man generous and merciful. It teaches a form of discipline that single men lack, and these and thus are more cruel and reckless. Meaning, single men or unmarried men are more cruel than married men. And that's for Of Marriage and Single Life. It is the comparison of married one from a single one. So let's proceed to the third one. So the same, it was taken from the of marriage and single life, but in this quote it says, wives are young men's mistresses, companions for middle age and old men's nurses. By just seeing or listening to me while reading, what comes or what do you think is the speaker relating to? Or do you agree that wives are young men's mistresses or old men's nurses? Do you agree? Or what must be what must be Bacon's idea in writing this? So, to answer those, it says here in this quote, a wife becomes the source of all sensual pleasure. As a couple reaches their middle age, especially the man, the wife becomes the companion, sharing moments of joy and sorrow, success and failures, triumphs and tragedies. In the old age, when limbs weaken and vision fails, a man gets a helping hand wife, from his wife, to move on, and this is why wives are called as the men's nurses. So that's it. Men or wives are called as the old men's nurses because they are the one who is able to help their husbands when they get old. That's for letter C. Let's proceed to letter D. Says here, children sweeten labors, but they make misfortunes more bitter. They increase the cares of life, but they mitigate the remembrance of death. The perpetuity by generation is common to beasts, but their memory, merit, and noble works are proper to men. This is taken from the essay of Parents and Children. In this quote of Bacon, it suggests that having children makes the work that parents do feel more worthwhile. But that when bad times hit, parents feel bad that they can't do more to support their kids. As an example, okay, and give an example of this. An example of this is when their child has not finished studying or something bad happened to their child, it hurts them 1,000 times. It hurts them 1,000 folds. Or just by seeing their children sick in their inner parts, in their hearts, they're praying, ako sana yon. The pain doubles when parents see their children suffering or have not achieved their dreams. And that's the reality of life. So, in addition, Of Parents and Children is an essay that argues about the relationship between parents and children, along with the pros and cons of having a children. This essay shows the pros and cons of having a children and how is parent related to his or her children. Another quote is taken from the advancement of learning. So it says here, if a man will begin with certainties, he shall end in doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties. Many people are stuck on the fact that they know everything, including me. I use it sometimes, or most of the time. They are certain of many things that just not true. If they feel they know it all, they have boxed themselves from learning more. So in order to unbox or to get outside from that learning box, we must absolutely leave room for doubt. We must give room for doubt and cut the uncertainties. Wherein Bacon said that there is no learning without having to pose a question. If there's no question, there's no gaining or there's no learning, according to Bacon. And a question requires doubt. People search for certainty, but there is no certainty. People are terrified of how can you live and how you must not know it. Advancement of Learning was written by Bacon, for he is concerned with scientific learning. The current state of knowledge, obstacles to its progress, and his own plans for revitalization of schools and universities. He is much concerned with scientific events or revolution. So, is advancement of learning important? Is the essays written of Bacon important to you and to me? To answer this, the advancement of learning is a very important one because it introduces the empirical method which has since become the foundation of the sciences, in which Bacon argues that the only knowledge of authority is knowledge that gathered from objective observation. Again, knowledge that's gathered from objective observation. So, all in all, that's the content of the essays. And we proceed to the number two, or the second writer, which is John Bunyan. John Bunyan born, was born rather in 1628, belonged to a thinker's family, and he became a thinker himself. He achieved a little education and later joined the parliamentary army, in which eventually became a preacher. So the Pilgrim's Progress was written by John Bunyan. The Pilgrim's Progress was an allegory that shows Christian tormented by spiritual anguish. Eventually, a spiritual guide visits him and argues him to leave the city of destruction. Furthermore, Evangelist claims in here the Pilgrim's Progress that salvation can only be found in the celestial city, as also known as Mount Zion. Christian embarks on journey and meets a number of other characters before he reaches the celestial city. In other words, this work of John Bunyan focuses on the cost or cause of salvation that as we Christians, journey proves the road to heaven is not easy. The cost is great, and a true Christian must be willing to pay the cost no matter what. It also demonstrates that knowledge is gained through travel, Knowledge is gained through travel by portraying Christian and his companions learning from their mistakes on their journey. Pilgrimage depends on travel, and so a pilgrim must be a voyager, prepared to go far and wide. In addition, it is an allegory, for it represents a hopeless state of despair, doubt, and fear after one having realized his sin. So that's for the Pilgrim's Progress. It's all about the journey of a Christian, or how strong a Christian will stay true and faithful to God while undergoing a series of circumstances. For the third one, okay, next is the allegory. Don't you know that allegory is a story illustrating an idea or a moral principle in which objects and characters take on symbolic meanings external to the narrative? It is a story illustrating an idea using symbolic meanings. And an example of this allegory was taken before, or what has been said, like the Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. So that's for allegory. And for the next writer, we have John Milton. He was born on December 9, 1608 in Bread Street, Cheapside, London, England. He is the son of John Milton Sr. and Sarah Milton. He is a historian, poet, and journalist. He has knowledge or knowledgeable in English, Latin, French, German, Greek, Hebrew, Italian, Spanish, Aramaic, and Syriac. Let's proceed to his works. The Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is an epic poem consisting of 12 books, totaling more than 10,500 lines written in blank verse. It tells of the fall of the angels and of the creation of Adam and Eve under temptation by Satan in the Garden of Eden, or of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree. I know we are all familiar with the story of Adam and Eve, and the moral lesson of the story, or the epic poem, is to first seek an environment where you can be true to yourself and in which you can be the best of you possible. In other words, choose the environment before you choose the role. Again, I repeat, choose the environment before you choose the role. Paradise Lost also emphasizes that religious has three parts, or being religious has three parts. It's disobedience, eternal providence, and justification of God to man. That's for Paradise Lost, and let's proceed to Paradise Regained. Paradise Regained is consisted of four books that tells the story of Satan trying to tempt Jesus Christ like he tempted Adam. It centers on the temptation of Christ and the thirst for the Word of God. So this Paradise Regained is a little bit similar with the Paradise Lost, but this centers to the temptation of Jesus Christ by Satan. I know that we are all knowledgeable enough with this story, just like or where it was written in the Bible, particularly in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 11, wherein it tackles here how Jesus Christ stayed faithful despite of the temptations of Satan. So, what can we learn from this book, from this piece of John Milton? By reading alone or by knowing the story, we can perceive many things. But this story or this book depicts the theme of enduring the faith in God, belief in prayer, and a spiritual strength to persevere through obstacles. The character of Jesus Christ is the epitome of Christian heroism which we must follow. So this Paradise Regained is all about endurance, being loyal, faithful, and to God, whatever happens or wherever we go. And that's for the Paradise Regained. So here's another writer, John Donne. He was born on January 24 in London, England. He is a poet, priest, and most of his poets are belonging to satire, love poetry, and elegy, usually focusing on love, sexuality, religion, and death. So this is a literary piece from John Donne entitled Holy Sonnets. It addresses religious themes of mortality, divine judgment, divine love, and humble penance while reflecting deeply personal anxieties. So, Holy Sonnet 14 comes later in the series and depicts a speaker's personal crisis of faith. It is all about comparing God's divine love to a rough, erotic seduction, and longing for faith has made the poem one of Donne's most famous. I repeat, one of Donne's most famous poems. So here it is. Okay. As I read within your eyes. Holy Sonnets 14, John Donne. Bother my heart, 3% God. For you, as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, or throw me, and bend. Your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an absurd down to another Jew, labor to admit you, but oh, no need. Reason, your viceroy in me should defend, but is captivated and proves weak or untrue. Yet dearly love you, and would be loved fain. But am betrothed unto your enemy, divorce me, untie or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chase, except you ravish me. So from this sonnet, or from this Halle Sonnet 14, we can concur that it is all about the speaker beginning to ask God, who is three persons in the Christian religion, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to violently attack and enter his heart. The speaker, or in other words, The speaker wants the Trinity to enter his heart, life, and mind aggressively and fiercely, instead of compassionately and mercifully. So that's for the Holy Sonnets. And remember that Holy Sonnets is a poem that made Jolly Dawn famous, or it is one of the poems that made Jolly Dawns famous. So, metaphysical poetry is the use of conceits or far fetched similes and metaphors intended to startle the reader into an awareness of the relationships among things ordinarily not associated. Metaphysical poetry uses of the metaphor and similes. So, an example of metaphysical poetry is a piece written by George Herbert. But first, we'll know about George Herbert. George Herbert is an English religious poet, Major's metaphysical poet or poetry, notable for the purity and effectiveness of his choice of words. His most famous poem is the Easter Wings. For now, we will be tackling about his poetry features. George Herbert focuses on devotion, deep religious devotion. Second, linguistic precision, metrical agility, ingenious use of conceit. That's his features, and his work Easter Wings is formatted sideways on adjacent pages with the lines arranged to form the shape of a bird's wings. So this is an example of his work that is formatted sideways. As you can see, it, it is shaped as the bird's wings. It was written, arranged to follow the shape of the wings. So this is an example of his work. As you can see, it was formatted sideways. It follows the shape of the bird's wings. But do you wonder why he uses this format? Or why and how did she come or did he come this way? So Easter Wings is fairly simple yet quick moving. It is a Christian poem that addresses the fall of man and the speaker's desire to rise, and by using the shape of a bird's wings, the poet is able to emphasize the nature of the fall and rise the speaker is experiencing. Meaning, he wrote the piece using the wing shape for the reader to find new truths and meanings each time he or she reads it. And this Easter Wings focuses, or the poet desires to fly with Christ as a result of Jesus' sacrifice, death, and resurrection. So that's for Easter Wings. The second piece by George Herbert is The Altar. It is a concrete poems that deal with man's thirst for God and with God's abounding love. Or it is a direct devotional poem that depicts the speaker's desire to make a sacrifice to Christ. The poem, which is constructed in the shape of an altar, describes the metaphorical process of building an altar out of one's heart. So here it is. As you can see again, it is formed or arranged like an altar. It has a pattern. Therefore, this type of poem is considered a poem. Pattern poem, I should say. So let me read this. The altar. To praise thy name. A broken altar, Lord, thy servant rears, made of a heart and cemented with tears, whose parts are as thy hand did frame. No workman's tool hath touched the same. A heart alone is such a stone, as nothing but thy power doth cut. Wherefore each part of my heart meets in this frame, that if I chance to hold my peace, these stones to praise thee may not cease. O let thy blessed sacrifice be mine, and sanctify this altar to be thine. Herbert here is suggesting that one must worship God externally, internally, and through art or act all at the same time. So if the stirrings focuses on the desire of the poet to fly with Jesus, this altar or this piece of poem entitled Altar by Herbert focuses on the poet's desire to offer a sacrifice to God. So that's the difference between the Easterings and the altar. In continuation, we have here other writers such as Thomas Carew, which is a Cambridge graduate. Carew traveled as a private secretary until he eventually returned to England. Carew was appointed Charles First Steward or food taster in ordinary. He kept this position for the remainder of his life while strengthening his position as a poet. Carew eventually achieved the status of Caroline Arbiter Elengeti and the man who set the standard for poetic elegance at court. He is a cavalier poet. He devoted most of his work to song and love lyrics in which he complimented real or imaginary ladies. Second, Sir John Suckling, wherein the classification of cavalier implies an allegiance to Charles I in his political and military battles against various parliamentarian or religious groups during the 1620s through Charles' execution in 1649. Cavalier also implies that these poets were gentlemen, that they bore arms and rode horse in battle when civil wars raged from 1642 to 1648, and that they were carefree gallants. Suckling is an aristocrat who was also a soldier involved in political intrigue, known for his notorious gambling and his conquest of women. His poem reflects the carpe diem theme and Suckling's wit. So another writer, Robert Herrick, was born into a family of goldsmiths. He is the seventh child and the fourth son. He went to Cambridge at 22 and graduated at 29. After, after graduation, he served as a military chaplain. He was assigned a parish in rural England. While there, completed churchly duties and wrote religious verse and love poems. So after that, he was evicted from parish by Puritans and only allowed back during restoration of Charles I. And then next is the Cavalier poems. If we have metaphysical poetry or metaphysical poems, we have Cavalier poems, which was popularized by Thomas Carew, Richard Lovelace, Sir John Suckling, and Robert Herrick. And it is known for the elegant, refined, and courtly culture, often erotic and espoused carpe diem or seize of the day. Sir John Suckling is considered or is known as the father of Cavalier poetry. To proceed with, we will read this example of a Cavalier poem written by Robert Herrick, entitled From to the Virgins to Make Much of Time. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. All time is still a-flying, and this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. The glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a-getting, the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. In this Cavalier poem, written by Robert Herrick, it encourages young women to seize the day and enjoy their youth, and more specifically, to have plenty of sex and find a husband while they're young. And that's according to Robert Herrick. Another one is that it is all about the impact of time on a woman's life and the value of beauty. The poem begins with the speaker stating that a woman should do everything she can while she is young to take advantage of the love others want to give her. So that ends the writer's background and their literary pieces during the Age of Renaissance.